And I'm very happy to be here, very happy to be with all of you, and completely passionate about sharing this work because it's been my life for a very long time. It's like this isn't a this isn't a day job for me. This isn't my career. This is my spiritual path, my ministry, if you will, and living it, sharing it, practicing it, playing with it is my purpose. So thank you all for joining us. And at last count, there was like 50 people registered or something. So we may not be able to answer everyone's questions, but I hope to get to most of them and to be with you and answer burning questions as best I can. So the first thing actually I'd like you to do is just close your eyes for a moment. Ironically, we got you on the computer here looking at each other, but now dare to close your eyes and let go of the connection to the outside that you habitually make with your eyes, and feel your belly breathing. Feel the gentle movement of your belly in and out as you breathe. If you're not tensed up, your belly will gently move outward as you inhale and come back in as you exhale. Let yourself ride that gentle wave. Or if your breathing is a little faster and higher in your chest, then notice that that's going on and that you may be a little anxious or stressed in the moment. Now, gently open your eyes again and look at me or whoever's on your screen at the moment, and see if you can feel your belly at the same time. So you're making eye contact, you're making what appears to be outer contact at the same time as you're making inner contact. And then see if you can broaden your awareness even more so that you're there's a bubble of awareness inside which happens you. There's a bubble of awareness and you're watching the screen, and you're noticing your breathing, and you're noticing the kinds of thoughts that go on in your mind. Now, you may or may not find that very easy to do. It takes practice to be aware of awareness. To direct awareness takes practice. And yet, for this work, it's crucial. It's foundational. This isn't just about kind of like teaching you some new communication techniques that are going to fix things for you. This is actually a spiritual path or a practice. This is an out loud meditation. And I won't lie, it's not easy. It takes practice. And yet, to my mind, it reaches down to the roots. This is about dealing with the root causes of the ways that we make ourselves suffer as human beings, and dealing with the root potential that we have, as opposed to just kind of like trying to fix some of the symptoms, which I actually think a lot of self-improvement techniques do. This isn't about self-improvement. You actually don't need fixing. There's nothing wrong with you. And yet at the same time, there's some kind of asleepness that we suffer from. But there's a difference between being asleep or there being something wrong with you. It just might be more fun to be awake than asleep. But it's not that being asleep is bad. Okay, and I'm in an interesting position here because I am going to talk to you about awareness and talk to you about the ideas behind the practice, even though talking to you about the ideas behind the practice is not practicing. It's sort of like I have this interesting job where I have to talk to the mind about the possibility of giving itself a demotion. Talk to the mind about the possibility of it getting out of the way and letting awareness do the work. Because in this approach, awareness is the healer. Awareness is the catalyst of transformation, not all of your efforts at self-improvement. And that may sound a little abstract at the moment, but it will become clearer and clearer over time. You see, the way our minds usually work is that they're kind of more or less anxiously trying to figure out the problem, trying to figure out the solution to the problem, trying to figure out how to fix the problem, trying to predict the outcome of the applying the solution to the problem. You don't have to work that hard. It's more like a not doing what you habitually do that's going to be the transformational agent, not learning to do a bunch of new stuff. I hope that makes sense. Again, take a couple more breaths and just feel your body while you're listening. There's this kind of figure ground shift that is available to us at all times. I don't know if you've heard that term, but figure ground shift refers to, like, if you say you're taking a picture of something, an apple on a table with a big lens on your camera, and you can focus your lens so that that apple is crystal clear. And when you do, everything in the background is kind of fuzzy and you don't notice it. It's out of focus. That apple is what we would call the figure in that moment. All the rest of it is the background, the ground. A figure ground shift is when you switch that lens and suddenly the apple's a little bit fuzzy, but you see the whole background. You see the apple within the context of everything surrounding it. So that's one of the major skills that we want to cultivate, because usually we're like, oh, my figure, what am I going to do? This is a problem. Or look at how she treated me. Or what am I going to do with my life? We're obsessed with the content of what we're thinking about or worrying about or suffering about. And that is the figure. If you can accomplish this figure ground shift, you expand and suddenly, like, oh, here's me having a little, mind fuck about my problem. Here's me stressing myself out. How's my body feeling? How's my breathing doing? And we suddenly see a much bigger picture and we become aware of awareness. We expand our awareness. Instead of being identified with the content of what we're worrying about, we become aware of the process of you doing you. And this, of course, has huge implications for communication, because usually when we're communicating, we're very focused, tightly focused on and identified with my point, the point I'm trying to get across, the thing I need you to understand is, or what is it that you're trying to get me to believe, and we're focused on the content of our exchange. Like what really matters is this transfer of information. And ultimately, usually, whose interpretation of reality is going to prevail? Or can we happily agree on an interpretation of reality? Oh, yeah, that person is cool. Yeah, I think so too. Or no, that's bad. We both agree that's bad. So that's usually what we're doing. But if you can accomplish this figure ground shift, then you can notice, oh, look how we are communicating right now. Notice, am I getting attached to my point? Am I defending against what I think they're saying? Or am I trying to extract an apology? Or, you start to notice the way in which you are communicating, and you start to notice how you are feeling and thinking as you communicate. So then the communication becomes your out loud meditation practice instead of your strategy for getting what you want. Another deep breath, or 5. I'm hoping this makes sense. I'll tell you, as part of describing how Tabor is doing himself in the moment, that this is a subject that I'm very passionate about and that I've been very deep into for a very long time. So sometimes I'm afraid that things I say, which make perfect sense to me, might not translate. So you'll have plenty of chances to ask questions and clarify what it is that I'm babbling on about here. But I hope it's ringing a bell. I hope you're getting a sense of what we're talking about. One quick way of describing what this out loud meditation practice can look like, one model for it, and of course, every model is inaccurate. There's no such thing as a true model. Every model needs to be inaccurate. If you wanted an accurate map of New York City, that map would have to be as large as New York City, which is not very convenient. So a map is just a abstraction that may be useful, even though it's not ultimately true. So my map that I'm about to share with you is what I call the 3 N's of conscious conversation. The 3 N's, like the letter N, of a conscious conversation. The first N is what I call nowness, which is accomplished with, like I said, this figure ground shift. Like suddenly I become aware of, oh, now, what am I feeling in my body right now? What am I seeing with my eyes right now? What kind of thoughts are going through my mind right now? It's like this pivotal moment when you wake up out of the stream of identification with your experience into like, oh, there's just now. And there's huge, it's no coincidence that Eckhart Tolle said, the power of now. There's immense power in now. It opens up a new universe. At first, our experiences of now are just kind of like shallow. They're kind of like a little, oh, wait a minute, here. And I get a taste of now. But the more we practice, the bigger our experience of now gets. And now just becomes this big, expansive space that you can drop into at any moment. And then the second N is the N of that I call noticing. Because once you show up here and now, what is there to do? All there is to do is notice what's here. And you might think, well, okay, what can you notice? Some people would say, well, there's an infinite number of things I can notice. But again, another one of these not ultimately true but useful potentially models is that there's only a few things you can notice. The Buddhists called it what you can notice with your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, or the objects of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, meaning sights, sounds, smells, tastes, sensations, and thoughts. And most of the time, smells and tastes are occupying a relatively small amount of the bandwidth. So most of the time, the big four are sights, sounds, sensations in your bodies, and thoughts going through your head. That's what there is there to notice most of the time. So take a moment, notice, what sights are you generating with your eyeballs? What does my voice sound like to your ears? What is the quality of that sound that's hitting your eardrums, or any other sounds that may be surrounding you where you are right now? Notice what kinds of sensations you feel in your body at this moment. Where is there tightness or contraction or expansion or warmth or coolness? How's that belly breathing going? How's the sensations of breathing? And now the trickiest of all, see if you can notice what kinds of thoughts are going through your head. It's not easy to be obsessed with thinking, but it's challenging to notice the thinking as thinking. Oh, having a thought that this is slow, or I wish he'd hurry up, or having a thought of, what am I going to do, and what am I doing tomorrow, and I should be working on whatever thoughts. That's like a little burbling brook of thought in the background or foreground. So once you arrive in the now, then you can notice what's here and now. That far describes the practice of meditation that's been going on for thousands of years. And these spiritual geniuses discovered that kind of awareness is transformational. You just show up in that way and start really noticing your own experience in that way, and your experience quickens. It's sort of like most of your life, you've been unconsciously resisting your experience. It's kind of hard to be with your experience sometimes. It's not what you want. I don't feel good right now. This isn't the way that it's supposed to be. If only such and such. We have all these complaints and resistance about the experience that we're having. It's not quite right. We need to fix it in some way. Ironically, your resistance to experiencing the experience that you're having right now maintains it. They have the saying in some more modern psychologies, what you resist persists, meaning that which you aren't willing to experience keeps hanging around to be experienced. But the meditators of old were onto this thousands of years ago. They said, if I show up for this experience completely, evolution starts working through me. Grace will change things. And even while doesn't appear to be changing, the willingness that I cultivate through my willingness to be with what is, even when it's uncomfortable, that is love. My willingness to show up with what's actually here, and not try to fix it, change it. That is love. And the stronger I grow in that kind of willingness, the stronger I become as a loving, present human being. But okay, nowness, noticing with willingness. There's a third N that I think is coming online these days, and that's kind of the 21st century evolutionary leap in spiritual practice that is coming online. At least that's the way that I like to think of it, and I feel quite lucky to have been born at the time that this transformation is taking place. What is that? This third N is what I call naming. So nowness, arriving in the now, noticing what's here, and then naming is naming what you notice out loud to another person. It's the art of not only meditating, but then meditating out loud with another person. And that, when you get, I won't lie, there's a lot of skill to that. That's why I do what I do. That's why I teach people, I get people into 8-day retreats like the one that John and I are going to be doing in LA in March. And we go down, because this is, to really embody this practice I'm talking about is life changing. It's like a paradigm shift. It's like a whole new way of living. So it takes some time to get skillful at noticing, at naming what you notice. It takes some time to get good at dropping into the now every now and then it gets practice to get good at noticing what's here, and then it takes practice to learn to name what you notice. And what you will find is that when you do, there's this power or quickening that is unleashed. I said that when you bring awareness to your own experience, there is a quickening, there is a intensification, movement generated in your experience. And then that's multiplied when you do it face to face in real time with another traveler. I remember one time I did a lot of dream work. I did a very intensive path of dream work for many years. And I'd had this potent dream, and I woke up and I wrote it down, and I'm working it for like an hour and I'm going deep into it. Oh, yes, I see. This means blah, blah. And then somebody came in the room and said, "What you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm doing dream work." And they said, "Oh, what'd you dream?" And I just start to tell them the dream, and I just get a few sentences into it before this eruption of feeling comes out of me. I just start sobbing. It's like, what? I've been talking about this dream for an hour in the privacy of my own head. But when I started sharing about it with another person, oh, that was a whole nother thing. That took it to a whole nother level, because there's this way that we are deeply, deeply social animals, and we deeply, deeply want to be heard and understood, and we deeply, deeply want to connect, and we deeply, deeply want to know that my internal universe, my experience, is not separated by this unbridgeable gap from your experience. We want to know that there's the possibility of truly connecting, truly being understood, truly sharing. And in my experience, that kind of meditation, the interpersonal meditation, the conscious conversation, that is deeply transformational. And when you get together a little group of people that are practicing that way together, who form a conscious community, whether that be for the length of a workshop or more ideally for the length of a lifetime, that community, which shares so openly and honestly with each other, is like a crucible. It's like pouring rocket fuel on the fire of your transformation. There's so much more possible than trying to do spiritual or transformational work by yourself. In my experience, I like to say transformation is a team sport, and if you are trying to be a long distance runner by yourself in the realm of transformation, it will probably only take you so far, and it's easy, as the I Ching says, to get lopsided in your transformation if you're trying to do it all by yourself. Deep breath. And speaking of doing transformation together, why don't we start communicating with each other? And so I invite you to notice right now if there's a burning question in your belly, in your heart, and see if you can kind of distill that question down. When I lived in a Zen center, my Zen teacher would have this practice we called Sanzen, which is where you have a question for the teacher and you cook that question. You cook it, you distill it down. What's the heart of that question? Why does this really matter to me so much? What's my passion? What's my fire in the belly about this question? So no pressure, but see if you can connect with what really matters to you right now. What's alive in you? What's burning? What can we sit with together?
Okay, good. So my question is, I would like to do completion work with my mom,
Uh-huh.
and I'm very afraid of it, and I would like to get some help from you. How can I do it so that it not that it is not much more that it um, that we hurt each other, not so bad.
Yes. So
Yeah,
notice that right now, the experience you're having is imagining that a conversation like that with her will result in hurting each other. And
could be.
and what's that?
It could be, yes.
Right. Well, it's the idea of you hurting each other that
Mm.
goes along with you right now feeling scared.
Yeah.
So what does that scared feel like in your body at this moment?
Oh, I feel it in my stomach, and I feel a movement in my whole belly, and I also get a tightness in my head,
So
and
see
I
if you
feel that
can,
I hold my shoulders more.
yes, see if you can be completely willing to experience all of that right now. Like it's no problem. It's no problem that you feel the tightness in your shoulders and your breathing. Just see if you can welcome all of that, which kind of goes against our programming, right? What? No, I don't like that. I know you don't like it. See if you can also welcome not liking it. The voice in the head that says, I hate feeling this way. Okay, I hate feeling this way. This is the figure ground shift. This is the you getting bigger than that whole experience, putting space around that whole experience. Wow, look at the fireworks over here that I call Diana right now. Look at this tightness. Look at this worry. So
Yeah.
ironically, the 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 solution is embedded in the question, because your willingness to experience what you're experiencing is the microcosm and the macrocosm. In other words, right in this moment, you're scaring yourself about not wanting to experience the experience that you will have talking to your mother. And while thinking about that, while worrying about that, you're generating an experience right now that you don't want to experience. So, ironically, the answer is embedded in the question, meaning if you are totally willing to experience the experience you're having right now, then that's the same willingness that will allow you to talk to her. You see what I'm saying? I don't blame you for being scared of those experiences. When I started clearing with my mother, I was scared shitless about it. And I was embarrassed about that. I was ashamed, like, she's a small little person. She doesn't, yell at me. I could take her in a fist fight. Why am I so scared? This is kind of silly. But, our parents loom large in our psyches. They're like gods. When we were little, they were like these, gods on whom we were dependent. And to leave the nest, to actually leave the nest as an adult, is to take back the magical power that we have invested them with. Oh, they're just another person with their feelings, their thoughts, their opinions. What they think, what they feel towards me actually doesn't affect my worthiness or my safety or my anything. And whether they feel, sad or hurt or upset about something that I experience or feel or say is also not a tragedy. We both will survive. So you have to be willing to trust in that roller coaster ride of experience and let it be what it is. Now, of course, there is a whole art to how you do that completion conversation, how you express yourself in a way that is, as you say, not hurtful. Because, usually what people do is they don't name what they're noticing. They don't describe their own experience. They judge. They tell people about themselves. Well, the problem with you is blah, 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 blah. And that's what I call selling an interpretation. That's trying to be right about who they are or why they should feel bad or blah, blah, blah. And most people do that almost all the time, sadly. So the short answer is you're going to describe your experience out loud to her. And you can start with the piece of your experience that's most up in your face, which is, I notice I'm scared to even try to have a really honest conversation with you. I'm afraid we'll both just feel more hurt. And I'm sad about that. But on the other hand, I feel so distant from you not having any honest communication. And I'm sitting on all this grudges from the past and stuff that I want to let go of so I can have a different kind of relationship with you right here, right now, in the present, not colored by all that baggage. And, like I say, there's a real, I can't put in a nutshell, how you do that whole conversation. There's quite an art to it. And and for you or anyone else that's on the call, if you want to reach out to me one-on-one for coaching about how to do that conversation and to practice, or even to set up a facilitated conversation, which I
Yeah.
love doing with people, then we can set it up. Even with, I don't know if she speaks English. I've done facilitated conversations with Germans where we had a translator as part of the conversation too, which is interesting. But in general, having your conversations facilitated by communication ninja such as myself at first can be helpful, because there's a lot of bad habits. But but it's also good to just learn by experience, just jump in there and do your best and see what happens. And that's how I learned. Thank you, Diana. I feel you. I have been where you are, shaking in my boots many, many times, and so do many, many, many people who talk to me.
Me.
And the trick is to not think you need to be someplace different with it all than you are. It's like, oh, okay, this is where I am. And the first thing you can talk to them about is where you are right now. You don't have to achieve total completion. You say, oh, I want to have an honest conversation with you, and I'm scaring myself out of it.
Tabor, would you,
Her and
go ahead, Diana.
I asked her, and she said she would like to do it with me. And we both told each other that we are really scared.
Awesome. Awesome. That's a great place to start.
Yeah.
You are a step ahead of the game, girl. A lot of people don't have that luxury. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm happy for you. Well, just stay open-hearted with each other. How's this going, And acknowledge both your desire for tenderness with each other and your need to be honest about anger and conflict and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, good luck. Let me know how it goes.
Thank you.
Reach out for help if I can help.
Thank you.
All right.
Hey, Tabor, off of that, there was a question about, can you say a little bit more about what this thing is when Diana was talking about what completion is? And maybe that there's maybe in my mind, maybe a misnomer in calling it completion, which you alluded to a little bit there.
Yes. Yes. The ego is goal oriented. The ego likes to, create a project and finish it. So completion can be a misnomer. It is a way we describe that's partially true, like all those other models. What it refers to is the fact that all of us, unless we are Buddhas already, are carrying around this backlog of emotional baggage. There's like traumas that accumulated over time. And I sometimes say that it's like a piece of experience lands in your lap, and it's too intense for you in the moment. Some part of your psyche says, I can't handle this. And so it kind of congeals into this rock. It hardens into this rock. You say, I can't deal with this. And the rock goes in your backpack. And as you move through life, more and more rocks keep getting thrown in the backpack until you're staggering around under the weight of this big, heavy backpack full of rocks. So completion refers to being willing to take rocks out of your backpack and sit with them, bring your awareness to them, share about them, communicate about them, and in the process, dissolve them. And the more you do this, the lighter your load becomes. Now, of course, it's not completion in the sense that you're never done. You're never like, you just get better at being like a self-cleaning oven where, you know, things come in and you burn it up in the moment so that it doesn't become another rock in your backpack. And you keep pulling more and more rocks out of your backpack so the load gets lighter and lighter. And once you get good at all this, most of your conversations become not completion conversations of completion of the past, but staying current conversation, staying in the present conversation, being real with each other about what's here. Does that answer what you were getting at?
Yeah, that's great, Tabor. Yeah, Diane, I relate a lot to what you were talking about, and also you were like massaging your jaw a little bit there, of tightness there in the jaw, which I was also experiencing. And when I thought of my completion conversations with my mom, it was when there was so much that still needed to be shared, and I did probably 4 or 5 of those, which were what I, in my mind, termed big completion conversations. And now we're to a point where it's ongoing. So as Tabor said, it's the current stuff. I don't have much of an axe to grind anymore, and I just kind of get mad at little things, and we have a different kind of conversation. So I'm glad that she's open to you wanting to have that conversation. It's great.
Yeah, truth be told, my completing or getting clear with my mom took years, and I gave up hope at some points. And I felt like a bit of a fraud because I was like, I'm going around the country helping other people have these beautiful family reconnections, and yet with my mom, real tough, real tough. I was like, man, she is such a hard nut to crack, you know. But and there were periods of time when we just weren't talking for a while. It'd be like a year or two that I hadn't talked to her or something like that. But finally, we got down to the deepest layers of what was in the way, and secrets came out, and feelings were felt, and now I recently spent a week in a small apartment with her and her new boyfriend, and we all had a high old time, you know, which is saying something. So I'm my own testimonial to the fact that even with challenging relationships, it can be done, and that it's so worth it. And my dad died a little while ago, and I had completed with him. So when he died, I felt mostly sweetness. I felt appreciation to him for who he was to me, and gratitude, and you know, and I felt like, oh man, so grateful that I did my completion work with him before he died. Because I think the way that a lot of people suffer when their parents die is because all the unfinished business comes welling up, all the stuff that they know they never said, all the stuff that they know they can't ever talk about now. So talk to them while you can.
All right, let's who else has a question? I see a lot of people either are on the phone or don't have their video on, which is fine. Just in the chat, even if you're on the phone, you can hit the chat thing and just chat me directly that you want to ask a question, and then I'll open it up for you. So now let's open it up. Anybody raise your hand for those? All right, we got Jacob here. All right, go ahead, Jacob.
Okay. I feel my heart pumping, and I worry that some people will, or even you, Tabor, will find my question a bit dumb. So
yeah, don't waste my
time. So one, I don't know, theme or topic or whatever I keep myself busy with right now is that I describe it as that I see my cup always as half empty. So always see the things I fuck up, always see the things I should be better at, or when I have a to-do list of 10 items, I check 9 and I'm focused on the one thing I didn't do. And I'm shaking a bit right now. And yeah, I would just like to ask you for some advice or some words how I could maybe get out of that sort of constant
Yeah.
whipping myself.
Well, there's several different approaches that you could take to being with that. You could sort of work with it at the mental level, and that gets you so far. But then ultimately work with it at the more experiential level. At the mental level, you can ask yourself. If that is a strategy of trying to take care of yourself, which I'd like to propose that at least hypothetically or uh, uh, what's that word? I'm having a slip. Uh, as a working hypothesis, let's assume that habit that you have, that mental emotional habit that you have of focusing on what you're not doing and how you're falling short, is actually a way of taking care of yourself. It's not just masochism. It's actually a way of taking care of yourself. What do you think you get out of that?
Are you asking me, or is it a rhetorical question?
No, I'm asking you.
Mm. Well, I don't know, pushing myself forward or something like that, or
Uh-huh.
striving for something better. I don't know.
If we had more time, I would do parts work where we would try to contact that voice in you that does this thing to you and ask it directly. But in general, my best guess of it, shooting off the hip, would be that's a way that you have of trying to push yourself to do good, to do well, to achieve. To that voice is convinced that if you aren't ridden hard, you will not do well. You'll be lazy, or you can't be trusted. And actually, to a certain degree, we all in Western culture inherit that kind of a orientation. It's sort of like, consciously or not, we believe in original sin and that there's something wrong with us and that we need a good beating in order to behave the way that we should. So that's, again, just sort of like a mental understanding. But then once you find yourself in that place of like, okay, now I am beating myself, saying I didn't do enough, or saying my question is stupid, right? You did it when you started when you started your question. You started your question by saying, oh, I imagine other people will, like you, Tabor, will think this question is stupid. Oh, thank you, friendly critical voice, for trying to take care of me by beating me so hard. So you want to try to catch that critical voice, which in Gestalt and in some of the workshops we call the top dog, that wants to shame, criticize you. You hear the voice as a voice. You notice it as a voice, not the truth. It's sort of like that figure ground shift when you're really obsessed with like, oh, but I didn't do it, blah, 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 blah. Then you don't have any space around that voice. That voice is the truth. You need to figure out whether you did wrong or whether you did right. And figuring that out is the question, but it's not. The figure ground shift is you like, oh, put awareness around it and say, oh, right now I'm playing the game of am I right or am I wrong? And I don't actually even need to answer it. It's a moot question. There's no such thing. And this is part of what we do in the workshops, is try to deconstruct the whole paradigm of good and evil. we inherited this paradigm of good and evil, right and wrong, and think that it's real. But the truth is it's imaginary and made up. And even those of us who think we know better than that, who kind of get this theoretically, will slide back into this moralistic conversation of, am I right or am I wrong? Or is he or she right or wrong? So you want to be able to pull back and say, oh, I'm playing the dance of, am I right or am I wrong? And then let yourself feel everything that you feel in your body while you're playing that game. And like I was saying to Diana, can you be fully willing to experience this experience that's unfolding in me right now? Oh, this is me playing the game of, am I right or am I wrong? This is what that feels like. And the more that you sit with it and the more that you welcome it, the more that, and the more that you tell the truth about it out loud to a good witness, where you just name this experience out loud to a good witness that doesn't try to fix you or help you or rescue you, the more that experience will, as I say, quicken, intensify, move. And you may start to remember times when you felt shamed. You may start to remember the ways in which you've been carrying this concern around for a long time. And you may start to grieve or feel anger about that pressure that you and perhaps others have been putting on you for a long time. So it starts to become a full body movement that is coming through you. And when you, that's back to rocks in your backpack, because it's rocks in your backpack that drive this process that you're talking about. And the more that you can, ironically, there's rocks in your backpack that drive this process you're talking about of critics, self-criticism and stuff like that. And that self-criticism and stuff is used to keep those rocks in your backpack. They're used to avoid the experience that I don't want to have that started this whole habit. But if you can be willing to experience the experience more fully and let the elevator drop down a few floors, then out maybe comes the rock that drives the collection of rocks that drive that process. And the more that you then are willing to experience those experiences, the less internal pressure there will be to enact that process. It's sort of like the need that drove it will dissolve, and you'll be able to have. I talk in my work about full body forgiveness, and whether that's full body forgiveness of someone else who you feel hurt by or angry at, and full body forgiveness and compassion toward yourself about, I'm doing the best that I can at all times. And when you do that emotional work, it becomes actually real to you, that the compassion becomes a natural response, not a theoretical one. Not like, oh yeah, I'm doing the best I can, I deserve a break. Not just a mental response, but a like full-bodied love for yourself. Oh yeah, you're worried that you're not good enough. Oh, that's okay. It becomes a love for yourself in yourself.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And good luck with that. John, come back.
Yeah, we can.
Whoops, sorry about that. Oh, there you are. Oh, there, and you have video too. Okay, great, great.
Hi, Tabor. This is Begonia from Amsterdam.
Hey, Begonia from Amsterdam. How you doing? Good to see you.
Yeah,
Good to see you again.
yeah, good to hear you and to see you again as well. And hi, everybody. I have a question. Well, now my heart is beating as crazy.
Ah, good noticing.
And even my belly is getting contracted. Well, my question is about work related. Um, I'm very stuck at work, and I think I'm putting a lot of rocks constantly in my back. And it's this protocol or this I'm doing there something wrong for sure. It's about this politeness or this you have to be respectful and all these kind of things that I cannot express any anger or any disagreement in the way that I think it will be not on my back. And I have the question of how to tackle that, how to go through this at work and see how can I avoid to put more rocks in my backpack. And my second question is related to my boss, and I think I'm doing something there like a parallel with my father, a kind of figure, and I feel that I cannot cross that line. And I imagine that you're gonna tell me if I don't complete with my father, I won't complete with my boss, but I wanna hear it from you.
Yeah, well, great question. It's actually very common, these kinds of questions, and people don't realize it, but they typically recreate old family dynamics, old emotional dynamics, old unfinished business in their workplaces. And there's this myth that, like, you know, professional is separate from personal, you know, or that, you know, well, like at work, we're just emotions don't really come into it. We're going to just be professional, and you know, those kinds of things are not appropriate in the workplace, and blah blah blah. But let's face it, most people spend the majority of their lives at work, and they don't stop being emotional beings when they walk in the door. On the contrary, oftentimes the stakes feel higher at work, and they're like, you know, get all kinds of worked up. And it's promising that there is beginning to be a movement of conscious businesses and stuff that really want to support people in being fully human on the job, you know. But there is an old work culture of, you know, I'm a work bot at work and emotions don't come into it. And that's a lie, you know, because I hear the kinds of questions you're talking about over and over again. And then I start talking to them about having some more conscious conversation at work, and they say, oh no, I couldn't possibly do that. That's work. You know, I can't do it at work. And what's that about? You know, well, on some level, there's this fear of death that comes into the equation, because it's like, well, work is my livelihood. Work is how I make money. If I upset somebody at work, then I won't have money. Then I will die. That's sort of the unconscious logic that goes in there. Ironically,
I have that logic.
What's that?
I have that logic.
Yes. And ironically, there's a similar logic that comes up in families, because it's like, I'm totally dependent on my parents. If I upset my parents, they might reject me. If my parents reject me, I will die. That's sort of what we grew up with, because we are very dependent species. For many, many years, we are very, very dependent on our parents. And in our evolutionary history, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, we were very, very dependent on the little tribe that we belonged to. And if we got kicked out of the tribe for being not nice or too much of a pain in the ass, we might be dead. So We have this primal fear of losing other people's approval that gets kicked up, especially at work. And on some level, you just have to be willing to face that. It's sort of like it's hard to be honest at work. There isn't a realization in you that, well, there could come a point when this job wouldn't be worth it to me anymore. There could come a point where I would say, okay, forget this job. I'm going to find something else, or I'm going to live under a bridge and eat out of a dumpster for a little while if I need to. You know, I could lower my standard of living, whatever. If you don't have a real conversation with yourself about there being a line at which it's worth it to you, you know, to walk away, then you're kind of like going into the conversation with your arm tied behind your back. So I would first of all say, you know, be willing to face the possibility of losing your work, losing that job. Now, in actual point of fact, in my experience, when I coach people to have these kind of conversations at work, very, very few of them lose their job. In fact, in Berlin, I don't know if you were at that workshop. No, I don't think you were. In Berlin this last summer, there was somebody who had this same kind of conversation with me in the workshop. And I counseled her to go have an honest conversation with her boss. And she wrote us on like Tuesday after the workshop and said, guess what? I had that honest conversation with my boss and I got a raise. So they talked for like 2 hours and it was kind of intense. But at the end of it, they were closer and she got a raise. And he said, you know, I'm glad you came to me with all this. And so it's actually possible. Part of us is very afraid that honesty is dangerous and that, you know, nothing good can come of it. But it's actually possible for honesty and even conflict to be a creative, a source of creativity. So, as you know, because you've been to my workshops, there is an art to how you have that conversation. You can start by asking him, you know, will you be willing to have an honest conversation with me because I'm making myself stressed out at the workplace and I don't want to do that. And of course, I want to share honestly with you in a way that's, you know, respectful and stuff like that. And I hope that the result will be us working together more cooperatively and blah, blah, blah. Now, any boss worth their salt, when asked that straight out, is going to know that it's actually counterproductive to them to say, no, I don't want you to be honest with me. Keep it to yourself. That's bad for the bottom line. That's bad for work. So if you can get the boss to agree beforehand, okay, we're going to both be honest with each other in this conversation. We're both going to ask for what we want. If the way that we're talking about it doesn't feel good, you know, we can ask each other to say it a different way or to express some understanding of what we've already said. And you can kind of lay some ground rules and create a mutual commitment before you even get started. And that does a lot to lower the anxiety level. And then if you say something and they get pissed off, you say, well, this is me being honest, you know, as we agreed to do, you know. I don't want to hold it against you. I'm just sharing, you know, this is what. And then once you get into it, you do this skill of naming your own experience rather than talking about other people and what's wrong with them. You know, you talk about how you feel, what you want. And again, you know, I can't really give the blow by blow, the step by step of how you do that in the call, but you've been to workshops, so you know something about that. And I also love to facilitate conscious conversations in workplaces too. So, which I have done with great effect. And it's awesome when a whole workplace starts to have a culture of conscious conversation. That's awesome. So who knows? Maybe you'll be a missionary in spreading some of that practice in your workplace. I hope so. And I look forward to hearing how it goes.
Okay.
Thank you, Begonia.
So Tabor, it's 1:14 and we have time.
Wow, time flies.
But we have one more, and I imagine you're up for it.
Oh, yeah.
We've got Ilka here who, let me just turn that on. There you are. All right. You are up.
Yeah, hi.
Hey there.
Hi. I'm also calling from Berlin.
We got lots of Germans today. More Europeans than Americans.
Yeah.
Amsterdam, Berlin. How's it going?
Well,
Thanks for joining us late at night.
yeah, it's 9 o'clock. I have a question to you as a meditator also and communicating. I went to India a year ago, and I met a guru who kind of took me to realizing our true nature. And after that, I got into an intimate relationship with a man, and this whole meditating and going back to that place, and also going back into my mind, really got a knot into my head, because I can see my mind, and I'm totally not knowing what relationship is anymore. When I look around, I just see people performing in some way in relation to another. And when you said the three N's about naming things, I feel like I'm totally speechless in my relationship, because everything that comes up is mind or something from the past, and there's no use speaking about it. And
well, there's where I part company with you. The part that says there's no use speaking about it. Here's a little bit of a background to that question, which is, or a background to answering that question. I've spent a lot of time in spiritual circles, Buddhist circles, non-dual circles, blah, blah, blah. And there is a trap that people in those circles often fall into, which is, I replace my usual everyday stories with stories about non-dualism or stories about enlightenment, which is not the same as actual non-dualism. In other words, some people will think that they have achieved something because they have learned these new stories, and they'll like, something will come up and something will arise in the mind that's painful or whatever, and then the story will come up. Oh, but that's just a story, and I'm not, I don't identify with that story, and I am oneness, I am bliss, or whatever, without them really realizing that that's just replacing one story with another story, and that enlightened story is no better than the previous story. Not really. Maybe a scotch better, because it points toward the possibility of the actual experience of liberation or non-duality, which might peek through in given moments. But the truth is that most of the people who are practicing this kind of spirituality are spending a lot of time practicing their stories about that spirituality, which is different. It's totally different. In the experience of non-duality, your, rage at your partner is equally valid as your bliss on the mountaintop. There's no better or worse in any of your experiences.
Mm.
So I'm guessing from what you say that when you're in relationship, something uncomfortable comes up, and then a story comes in like, well, but that's just the past. That's just mind operating. Therefore, as you said, not worthy of even mentioning. Wrong.
Okay.
I don't go along with that part, because what's coming up, what's bubbling up spontaneously into awareness is what wants your attention. That's what wants healing in that moment. And what's healing in that moment is compassionate awareness, is acceptance of whatever's arising in that moment, not subtly or not so subtly judging it as like, well, you're not valid because you're just about the past or you're not enlightened. That's just like shaming someone for being where they're at, and the one doing the shaming is suspect to begin with. The voice that says, well, that's just the past, is really just a new and improved version of your inner critic. Just like inner critic given new words. Oh, these are sexier words. These are more spiritually correct words. But the process, again, we were talking about the content versus the process. The process is still the same. I'm making myself wrong for how I feel. That's not revolutionary. That's not spiritual. That's just spiritual correctness or spiritual moralism. So the trick is, do you know that poem by Rumi about the guest house?
No?
Oh, there's this awesome poem. I wish I had it memorized. But he's talking about this human experience is like being a guest house. And every morning a new arrival shows up at the door. Welcome all of them. Bring them into your home, because even if it's sorrow or grief or anger, he may be trying to sweep you out for some new delight, Basically, the premise is you need to just welcome everybody, all the visitors. Treat them with hospitality. Treat them with kindness. Treat them with love, even if they themselves don't look kind or loving at all. Even if what I'm embracing is my hatred. And that's embarrassing, right? That's some shameful shit sometimes. Like, God, I'm just hating you right now, or I'm so competitive or jealous in this moment, or whatever it is. The trick is to not feed it or fight it. My Zen teacher used to say in meditation, he wasn't thinking about it in conversation, but it's equally applies there. In meditation, be with whatever arises and don't feed it and don't fight it. Feed it means feeding it stories about how right you are or how wrong somebody else is or how wrong you are, or feeding it the fuel of right and wrong and your stories.
So you put it out. You say it out. That's your solution.
Yes. Just to finish the thought, feeding it is indulging in it. Fighting it is rejecting it or pushing it away. So the trick is to do neither one of those. You say, hey, I'm having sort of an intense experience right now. Would you be willing to listen to me about it? And you try to both completely welcome and honor that experience and take responsibility for it. It's not your fault that I'm feeling this way. And I'm really feeling this way. Would you be willing to listen to me about it? And it's that not resisting the experience, the being willing to welcome the experience and fully experience the experience that will allow it to come and go, rather than every time you push it away and say, oh, that's not spiritual. He says, He goes back into the closet and waits for his next moment to jump out and grab you. Because all that unfinished business, it wants to be loved. It wants to be embraced. It wants to achieve dissolution in the light of your compassionate awareness. And that means interpersonal awareness, not just if it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to bring awareness to all my own shit and I'm not going to bother anybody else with it. You rob yourself of the huge potential of true intimacy, what I call revolutionary relating. It's like making your meditation into an interpersonal, creating a field that in which you both participate, and that field has this synergistic effect. It's not additive, it's multiplicative. It's like the oh, what's that word? Shoot, I'm forgetting again. It's more powerful than the sum of the parts. It's like you both can do more together than you could ever do by yourselves. So I dare you and encourage you to say, well, I'm thinking this is not a very spiritual thing to be feeling or thinking right now, but I want to share what's going on with you. Will you listen?
Thank you.
All right. Good luck with that. Let me know how it goes.
Yeah, Tabor, Ilka, when you were speaking, I was thinking, I live in a Zen community here, and that thing comes up. And as a starting place, because sometimes connecting with the actual feelings and all with a person takes a little bit of time, but connecting with the ways in which I stop myself sharing something because of my spiritual thoughts is a practice that I do here. Particularly if I ever put on like a Zen performance. Oh, so I'll call myself out and say, I'm really being that Zen guy right now. I'm really being that like non-dual guy or whoever that is.
Yeah. I like to call that starting where you are. So like we were saying to Diana in the first question, where she said, I'm scared to talk to my mom. I'm scared we'll create hurt between us. Well, you don't have to leapfrog over that fear and be completely honest out the gate. You start where you are and you say, oh, I'm really scaring myself about being honest with you. Or similarly, you're saying, oh, I'm stopping myself from being more open, more messy with my spiritual ego and my, desire to look good.
Well, Tabor, thank you so much. We're at a few minutes before we're going to finish. And before I ask you for the closing words, I just want to let people know we'll send this out to you again. But just so you know, the next webinar to ask more questions and all is actually coming up pretty fast. So we're November 1st. The next one is actually coming up November 18th. And Tabor's focus on that is going to be living a life of passion. So we'll make sure to get all the word out there about that. So if you're around, you can sign up for that. Tabor, do you want to jump in and say something?
That one's at a different time than this one, right?
Yes, that one is, I'm not sure. I don't have that here. Maybe Manal can check. I think it might be offered in the evening. So that might be a 7 p.m. one, which might be a little more challenging for the people in Europe. But we'll definitely, after all these calls, for everyone who was involved, we'll send out a recording of it as well. So we're and one of the things is we're basically testing out a couple different times. So we may find out that it might be good to have, once a month, we have it at noon here, and once a month we have it at 7 to allow different people to be on the call.
And people can join the on Facebook. I have the Revolutionary Relating and Radical Honesty online practice community. And if you're not already in that, I invite you to join that. It's primarily intended for people who have done a workshop. If you haven't done a workshop, but you feel like you've been around the block a few times and you have a sense of what the power of this kind of conscious conversation, you can just say that and we could probably include you anyway. But whether it's in that group or through contacting on the website or whatever, feel free to submit questions for the next webinar, even if you can't make it. And I'll try to answer questions that get sent to me if you can't be on the webinar live. Looks like it's going to be November 18th at 10 a.m. Pacific. So that's only 6 p.m. CET. Isn't that what you guys call it? Berlin time, I think, is CET. So, yeah, 6 p.m. So that one will be actually earlier than this one was.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you, Europeans, for coming on late. And I'm also interested in figuring out what are good times. What are good times? Sorry, I was getting the hook from the wings. What are good times to have these calls? You know, because we're trying out some different times for people so that people around the world can contribute and participate. So if you have particular times that you can't do or want to see done, let us know. And we're trying to serve people in various time zones simultaneously.
So Tabor, I liked this. I thought it was great to have this kind of interaction live. And so it's great that I'm happy that we'll continually do these so that people, even if the topic they've even heard before, there's an opportunity to share and we all learn from. So I encourage people, if they have questions and all and they can't be on the call, to send them in, because probably your experience will be similar to a lot of other people. The work question, the question with a partner. And for those who are on the West Coast who are here, we're going to be in Oakland November 10th through 12th for Radical Intimacy workshop. Friday night, you can come and check that out. Friday night's free. We'll do an opening circle. And then if you want to dig in and do some of the deeper work that Tabor was talking about, that's on Friday, November 10th through the 12th. And then for everybody, we've just put it together, so I'm excited about sharing it, is next year, 2018, March 3rd through the 10th. We're going to be doing an 8-day in Los Angeles. And so we'll be able to go really deep. And it's going to be fun for people who are in areas where it's really cold. It's going to be beautiful, 75 degrees Fahrenheit. There'll be a pool, there'll be a hot tub, and all of these things. There'll be an area to like sunbathe. And all of these things are there, not necessarily just as luxury, but are as a way for us to come back into our bodies and come back into our experience to share that with others. So that's on the website, March 3rd through 10th, next year, 2018.
And when you can, living in community together, even for 8-day period like that, is by far the best way to really get this stuff in your bones. You know, my not so stealth agenda is actually to build community long and short term all over the world. So we're building a community there in Berlin and in England and stuff. So as well as here in the Bay Area and Texas, different places. This work is something that's best done by really being with other people who are also committed to it. And if you have the power to join us, March 3rd through 10th in LA. It would be awesome to have you, and awesome for you. So thanks everyone for joining us. This has been a real pleasure. The only unpleasant part of it for me is that I want to answer everyone's questions, and I'm afraid of not getting to anybody. But this is just the beginning of a conversation. This isn't the end. I want to be in conversation with all of you ongoingly. Feel free to reach out to me on Facebook, reach out to me in the online practice group, reach out to me at our website. We are building global community here. So I'm running over time. I'm being informed that I'm running over time. So we will end. Take another moment to just breathe. Feel your body in this moment. And I'll just say a little word of gratitude. Thank you, thank you, thank you for waking us up again this morning with these miraculous bodies and minds and the gift of life which courses through them. And for not just any life, but the incredibly privileged lives that we lead, such that we may concern ourselves not with where our next meal is coming from, but learning to love and to spread that love in the world. Thank you all for joining us. Stay in touch. Be well.